is Evan.
I'm Micah.
And I'm Jonathan.
And you're listening to the Tackling Basketball Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We got a good one here for you, as is the hope with every single episode for Season 2, because it's new and improved over Season 1, which is a low bar, but here we go.
Yep.
We'll, of course, start out with one of our favorite segments, Toast and Roast. Micah, who are you toasting this week?
My toast of the week is Mike McDaniel, head coach of the Miami Dolphins. After watching how he switched up the offense against the Patriots in week 2, where first week it was a lot of deep bombs just down to Tyreek Hill. It was pretty much the entire game, it felt like. And then when the Patriots switched up their entire defense to restrict that, was a lot of running from Raheem Mostert and a lot of just check down passes. Really impressive just seeing how he adapted and his changes. Plus, he's just a fun dude. He's a fun guy. All of his interviews are incredible. At halftime, the way he ran off of the field was absolutely hilarious. I love Mike McDaniel. I love having him the head coach of my favorite team. It's a good time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if I asked you before the season started who you thought would be like the breakout rookie, who you thought would be the guy that is like screaming up the leaderboards of the Offensive Rookie of the Year candidacy, you might have said Bijan Robinson, though he probably started at the top. You could have picked any of the top 3 quarterbacks, or maybe gone with JSN or Quentin Johnston or Zay Flowers. But no, it's Puka fucking Nakua. My guy. Actually, he's not my guy, unfortunately. I ignored the advice of one of my good fantasy friends who was buying him everywhere he could in like 4th rounds of rookie drafts. And the kid has just been stellar so far. 15 receptions last game, over 150 yards. Just screaming to the top of the rankings, leaving everyone in his dust. And I mean, before the show, Mike and I were talking, and he could deserve a spot on this toast just for how awesome his name was.
Yeah.
He's now also sitting at like plus 600 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, behind guys that were just wildly favored before he started showing out. And I think that if there's any bright spot for this Rams team who is looking to regress again from last year, it's their young stud at wide receiver who will just continue to improve and impress.
Absolutely. He's got the Rams actually looking pretty decent. Way to go, Puka. Didn't think that was possible. All right. For my toast this week, I'm going with Sam Howell. Week 1, he looked okay. He looked like a first-time starting quarterback. Nothing drastic. But against the Denver Broncos, he looked very, very good. And the thing that impressed me the most was second half when they were down by quite a bit. He really didn't seem nervous. He seemed totally fine and just had a mindset of, I'm going to go out there and do my job, and we're going to come back and win this game. And that's exactly what they did, which also is a knock against the Denver Broncos, but I think Jonathan's getting to that later. But Sam Howell's been looking good. I think he's just going to continue to progress this season, and he's got a good wide receiver room around him, so I think he'll be able to be successful. So, way to go, Sam Howell.
Yeah, I did not get Puka in every league, but I did wind up with Sam Howell in all but one. Thanks a lot, Evan.
You're welcome. I stole him from you.
Yep.
All right, now over to roasts of the week. Micah, who are you going at?
I'm roasting Jason Sanders, the freaking kicker for the Dolphins. This guy has been the biggest cause of stress in these first 2 weeks. Week 1, he missed an extra point at the end of the game that would have put us up 3. Instead, all the Chargers needed was a field goal, and thankfully we were able to get a stop on that last drive. Game 2, missed a field goal at the end that would have sealed the game, putting us up 10. Had a blocked kick. Just, he's so bad. He can't kick anything right, and it's driving me insane. Just get a new kicker. This guy sucks.
Love it getting personal.
I'm roasting my own team right now, and it hurts, but it's true. The Denver Broncos have fallen to 2-0, a record
0-2.
that 0-2. The Denver Broncos have fallen to 0-2, a record that is pretty difficult to come back from. Historically, only around 10% of teams who start the year 0-2 ever make the playoffs, and one team in the history of the league has ever made the playoffs after starting 0-2 at home, which is ironically the Cincinnati Bengals, who find themselves in a very similar hole again this year. And they could probably deserve a spot on this roast as well, but I think that they faced a lot better opponents than the Broncos have. The Raiders are unimpressive. We saw that this week against the Bills when they just could do nothing defensively against Josh Allen and could do nothing offensively against a pretty middling team. And then the Commanders, who I have as a sleeper pick for playoffs, which is looking pretty good right now. But this team should not be better than the Broncos. And I would even go so far as to say they are not better than the Broncos. The Broncos' problem over the last couple of years is just that they do not have any clue how to close out a game and how to win in tight situations. They have lost these games by a combined 3 points, which is so little to overcome. And they sort of started to get their drive in the fourth quarter of this last game, where they were down by 11 late in the fourth quarter. A couple of really solid drives and a beautiful Hail Mary pass that connected right at the end. A lot of Broncos fans were calling for the head of the referee. I was calling for the heads of the players who got themselves into that hole. And you could hear that in the press conferences as well. They all were upset at the call and knew that you can't rely on referees to win the game for you. You need to go out there and do it yourself. And when the game was in reach, when they were up 21-3 at the start of it, and then they got complacent, and then it got close, and then they got timid, and then it was just not a game anymore. And I'm really hoping that last couple of drives cemented their, or started to pull out the ability to actually win in close games and have the confidence in themselves. But until they actually do it, even if they blow out a team by 50, until they can win in a close game, I'm not going to be convinced that this team is ready for anything.
Yeah, that was a ridiculous game. I was watching that game and then at halftime left to go for a walk, came back, turned the game back on, and the Broncos were down. I was like, how the hell did that happen?
Yeah.
What is going on? They looked so dominant in that first half.
Yeah.
Just to throw all of it away.
It was the first time in over a decade that the Broncos had started out the game with 3 touchdowns in 3 drives. And they lost the game. It was embarrassing.
I think the toughest part for them is so far this season through 2 games, which isn't a huge sample size, the Denver Broncos are one of the best teams in the league on scripted plays. But whenever Russell Wilson gets forced outside the pocket, whenever the play breaks down, they become one of the worst teams in the league, and he becomes one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. So Russell Wilson has just lost his mojo. He is no longer the quarterback he was in Seattle, and he is no longer the guy that can go out and save your team when stuff's going wrong. He's pretty much just relying on Sean Payton and his game plan to make him look good.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't expect a quarterback at his age to be excellent outside of the pocket, but that's kind of been his whole game plan his entire career, is to be able to get outside the pocket and either make something happen with his feet or with his arm, and neither one is really happening right now. Call it a little bit of a lack of wide receiver talent. The 3 receiving touchdowns this game were all to rookies or second-year players. The only rushing touchdown was to a rookie. So we're just proving that. Hopefully, it's a good sign that our depth will improve in the future, but it's also proving that they have no depth right now. And yeah, it's going to be a tough challenge next week, too. Facing off with the Dolphins to either take an 0-3 hole and just all hopes go out the window, which they mostly already are, or how do you beat them?
You don't.
Trick. Yeah,
They will.
trick question. You don't.
They will, but this week I'm upset. Next week they will be my toast.
For mine this week, honorable mention of the Arizona Cardinals. I'm not sure how they blew that lead to the Giants, but they did. I almost went with them, but it's just so much more fun to pick on the Bears. I know it seems silly that I'm doing Bears stuff 2 weeks in a row, but Justin Fields is just so bad. Like I mean, there were clips. Russell Wilson got made fun of last year for a clip that came out during a game in which he was standing there in the pocket and he literally had a wide open guy in the end zone right in front of him, and he didn't throw to that guy. That happened to Justin Fields on Sunday as well, except this time he had 2 wide open guys in the end zone waiting for him to just throw him the ball, and he didn't do it. He actually threw an interception instead, which is worse than what Russell Wilson did. He also, after the game, blamed one of his interceptions on the offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator didn't throw the ball, Justin. You did, you dumbass. Don't throw interceptions. So I'm not sure how we've gotten here, but Justin Fields has regressed and is like viewing the game slower than ever. His release time is horrible. He just looks so bad, and you could probably blame some of that on the Bears organization. But Justin Fields is far from the MVP candidate that a lot of people were thinking that he would be going into the season. So he needs to pick it up. Otherwise, I would not be shocked if the Bears wind up regretting trading away that first overall pick by the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears have proven many times over that they are not great at player development. So maybe this is just another sign of that. Maybe they can put it together and he sort of breaks out a little bit more like he did last year, but only time will tell. I almost had an
As
honorable.
a Packers fan, I sure hope not.
Yeah, I know you do. They were my honorable roast of the week, by the way, the Packers. Losing to the Falcons in dramatic fashion. And the reason that they were like almost my roast of the week is I was at a tailgate this weekend, and we were watching on one TV NFL Red Zone, and on the other TV, out of every game we could have picked, the person who owned the TV thought that the most entertaining game would be Packers-Falcons. And he was right. It was not entertaining for the right reasons, but a little bit embarrassing there as well. So maybe the Falcons are just that good. I did not see that coming, though. We'll see.
Yeah, well, shit happens.
Shit happens.
My Packers being the last remaining undefeated team, that bet went out the window way faster than I thought it would. But
yeah. Oh, we'll have some things to review in the betting segment at the end of the show. It was not good. No.
All right, but to move on from my own personal depression, we'll now move into NFL power rankings. And a lot of stuff moving around. Again, it's week 2. It's hard to pinpoint stuff. Like we said last week, the top and the bottom are pretty easy to solidify, but everything in the middle is just a jumbled mess.
Yeah.
There's so many teams that are 1-1. It's hard to balance things out. Micah, who are your biggest swingers of this week?
This was, like you said, this was a tough week to gauge everything, but I'm kind of surprised by how high I still have both the Jets and the Browns after those injuries.
Yeah.
Especially the Jets, because, man, did Sam looked horrible. Like, he played so bad. Like, I was watching that game thinking, like, maybe if he can just play all right, the Jets can still be in a good position. And he did not. Brown still looked okay at the end of the game. They couldn't get a lot of offense going. But Deshaun Watson's still pretty good, as much as I hate to say that. But they're both a couple teams that I'll be looking at these next coming weeks, because I can easily see them falling very low in the next couple weeks if they don't bounce back from these injuries.
For me, I think my biggest risers here, you can obviously see Dolphins screaming into number 2. I sort of laughed at Michael last week when he threw them up there. And I'm excited for them to drop 10 points when they lose to the Broncos this week. But 2 very impressive victories against 2 pretty difficult teams in a row. So not much to say other than praise towards them. Obviously, they need to figure out some things with special teams. But once they're there, they are lethal. And then I also have the Commanders nearly cracking the top 10 now. I do think that obviously their defense started really slowly, but as soon as they started to sort of adjust their game plan and get after the quarterback, everything changed. And then on the other end, Eric Bieniemy has just been an excellent hire for them. Sam Howell's looked impressive, and the whole team is looking to elevate themselves. And my hot take of them making playoffs is looking colder and colder by the week. I have the Titans also rising a lot. I had them as a pretty poor team, and they've just proven to be pretty good against some middling talent. But I just, like you said, the middle of the board, I don't know a lot of what to do with it. Seahawks, mostly unimpressed by their victory this week, which is why they only rose 5 spots for me. I still don't view the Lions as that strong of a team. I know that I currently have them above the Seahawks on this, and so maybe that should swing the Seahawks a little higher. But I mean, the Chiefs were a degraded, flaw-ridden opponent. And the Seahawks made a ton of mistakes as well. So I view the Lions as not near the top, and the Seahawks, their victory that was too narrow in my mind, also didn't earn them a lot. And then obviously I have the Packers and the Raiders falling a lot with pretty tough losses to, in my mind, Packers a weak opponent. Raiders just looked like shit. They are trying to be the worst team in this division and aren't currently. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's an absolute cluster in the middle. I have the Seahawks jump up a lot purely just because I don't know what to do with the middle of the board. So why not have the Seahawks up there? Because screw it. 2 biggest things for me this week were I have the Bengals and the Chargers absolutely plummeting. I have the Bengals all the way down at 22 and the Chargers at 25. They probably don't deserve to be that low, especially the Chargers, because they've just kind of been unlucky up to this point, to be perfectly honest. But the Chargers' defense has looked worse than ever. They couldn't stop a worm trying to get down the field. It is freaking miserable over there in Los Angeles. But I have them down at 25, and then the Bengals, especially with Joe Burrow potentially being out for a little bit here after re-aggravating that calf injury, they're going to be struggling here for a little while. Titans rising up, Steelers rising up. Impressive win by the Steelers, honestly. But then, yeah, it's just kind of a mess in the middle. I'm looking forward to here as we get into the middle of the season, and we'll have a much better feeling for where teams should actually be landing on this.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on the Bengals and the Chargers. I think those are really interesting teams to rank right now, just because they are both starting off 0-2, but it's also 2 difficult opponents on teams that are traditionally slow to start off the season. I mean, it's a huge hole to dig yourself out of, but it's hard to say that either team will fail to do that at this point. I think another really bad week in a row, and you'll see me drop them really hard. But for now, both of those teams are sort of hanging out, probably a little higher than they should, but I just think that their talent is strong enough that they'll earn their way back up.
Yeah, I had the same reaction with both of those teams.
You had the Bengals moving up a spot, Micah.
Did I really?
You did. And I think that's because you dropped the Browns really hard.
I'd also dropped
the Chargers. You dropped the Browns and the Chargers past them. So effectively they fell one spot, but two other teams fell more.
Yeah.
We'll sort it out as the season goes on.
Yeah.
All right. Now into our matchups of the week. As you know from last week, this is our new segment where we pick out our favorite matchups going into this week. It could be team matchups. It could be wide receiver versus corner, quarterbacks. Lots of different ways to go about this. Last week we had all teams. We'll see if we have a bit more variety to go into this week. Micah, go ahead and kick us off.
The game I'm looking forward to this week is the Falcons versus the Lions. This is mostly just because I want to see the Falcons play against a better opponent than they have been playing against. I think this is going to be their toughest challenge so far this season, but they've looked pretty good the first 2 weeks. I'm surprised by how well Ritter and Bijan Robinson are playing. Not anything amazing or fantastic, but for a couple young players on a young team, they're playing better than I thought they would right off the bat. So I'm excited to see just how they come out against, I think, a pretty good Lions team. So, yeah, I'm not as focused on the Lions as much. I think they should win this game, and if they don't, then I think I'll start to question a lot more about their team. But for now, I think this is a really interesting game for the Falcons.
Yeah, I feel like I agree with you there. The Lions are a team that's doing better than I expected, and the Falcons are in the same boat. And in this game, we might see a chance to figure out which, if any, are frauds.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's a good, entertaining game, but it'll at least be informative.
Hopefully the Falcons aren't frauds, because that'll give the Packers justification for losing.
Yeah, for my matchup of the week, I'm going with a wide receiver versus cornerback pairing. And that is Tyreek Hill versus PS2. Someone who is arguably the best shutdown corner in the league last year versus someone who was arguably the best burner in the league last year. And we got to see a little bit of a taste of what PS2 on top talent looks like in week 1 when he had 3 passes batted down against Devontae Adams on just 6 attempts to him while he was being covered. Meanwhile, Adams absolutely annihilated the Broncos defense when he was guarded by anyone else. And I think you'll see a very similar thing here as well, with maybe the only difference, I'm hoping, we don't see Patrick Surtain not guarding Tyreek Hill. So I think it'll just be a incredible fight to watch this entire game to see how often is Patrick able to discourage Tua from throwing him the ball, and whenever they do find that connection, who wins that battle. So it'll be a really entertaining thing for me, I think.
I'm going to bet on Tyreek Hill over 100 yards.
I wanted to do a yards bet, but they aren't up yet.
All right, for my matchup of the week, I'm going Vikings-Chargers purely because these are 2 teams that need to prove it to the entire league that they can be the playoff teams that a lot of people are picking them to be. They're both 0-2, like Jonathan said. Not many 0-2 teams make it to the postseason. Chargers defense needs to step it up. The thing is, though, and we'll get to a bet about this later, this might be like the highest scoring game of the entire season. Both of these defenses suck so bad, but they also have such potent offenses that, I mean, this could just turn into an absolute bloodbath. Like, I would not be shocked if both teams score into the high 30s or 40s, honestly. Neither defense is likely to show up. Justin Herbert could probably throw for like 5 touchdowns. Kirk Cousins might do the same. This is going to be insane to watch.
Yeah, I think so. And they're both playing for their lives. Like we said earlier, only 10% of teams make it to playoffs when they are 0-2 to start the season. Both of these teams were favored for playoffs, and 6 teams ever have made the playoffs after starting 0-3. So if you lose this, you're dead in the water. It'll be a really, really entertaining game to watch, I think.
Please, God, let the Chargers win so I don't have to watch the Minnesota Vikings make playoffs again. All right. Now over to our trivia segment, and Jonathan's going to be running it this week. So, Jonathan, what have you got for Micah and I?
Yeah, so in this week, I sort of wanted to step a little bit through the history of the two sports that we cover on this podcast. Sort of talk a little bit about their origins, a little bit about their evolutions, and then finally a couple of historic teams from each. So in this section, I'm sort of going to tell like a little bit of a story of the development of each league, and then ask you guys to basically 2-part questions for each one. First, you're going to try and guess what year this part of the timeline occurred in. And I'm not doing the if you go over, you're out. It's just closest person gets a point. Then second is more often than not a somewhat challenging like bonus point that's available to each of you. So I'm going to need you to write down your answers before we like discuss them out loud. And up to 2 points for grabs every single time we go through this. But let's go ahead and get started with American football. So the origin of American football is somewhat uncertain, as its adaptation from American rugby was not an overnight process. It took years to solidify the rules and decades for anyone to ever get paid to participate in the sport. The inventor of the pole block, a player and coach, William Pudge Heffelfinger, became the first documented professional football player when his Allegheny Athletic Association beat the Pittsburgh Athletic Club 6-0 off of his own scoop and score. In what year did this game, which can be called the first professional football game, occur? And as a bonus point, how much was he paid?
I think this was done in 1931, and he got paid $5,000.
Okay. Evan, what's your guess?
I said 1918, and I'm saying $50.
You guys hit the geometric mean for what he was paid. He was paid $500 plus travel expenses, which were next to nothing. And the year was 1892.
Oof.
So no one got the bonus point, but Evan secured the year. It's possible that others were paid before this, but this remains the oldest provable claim, with the expense sheet now residing in Canton's Pro Football Hall of Fame. This expense sheet is now referred to as Pro Football's birth certificate. Moving over to basketball, winter in Springfield, Massachusetts brought boredom for sports-loving students at what is now called Springfield College. Required to participate in an indoor athletics, but uninterested in marching or calisthenics, their instructor James Naismith nailed 2 peach baskets to the lower rail of the gymnasium balcony and invented the game of basketball. In what year did this occur? And for a bonus point, what popular Christian youth organization founded Springfield College and was its namesake at the time?
I'll let Evan go first this time.
Okay. For the organization, I'm going CYA, the Catholic Youth Organization. And for year, I'm going 1891.
I'm saying it was the YMCA in 1918.
Holy shit, Evan. It's 1981. And yes, it was the YMCA. So you each take home a point there. Naismith was inspired by elements from popular sports, such as passing from American rugby, the jump ball from English rugby, the use of a goal from lacrosse. Surprised that's not soccer, but that's what he documents as inspiration for a goal. The shape of the ball from soccer, and the horizontal opening to the goal from a childhood game that he played called Duck on a Rock.
All right.
Back to the NFL.
Ugh.
In the earliest days of the NFL, the team with the best record was crowned the NFL champion. One team, known for its part in the oldest active rivalry in the NFL, changed everything when they finished the season tied with the best record and won the first ever unofficial NFL championship game. When did this occur? And for a bonus point, who was that team?
I think it was the Cowboys in 1960.
Evan?
I'm saying it's my Green Bay Packers beating the Chicago Bears in 1959.
The year was 1932.
Oof.
Way before I would have
Oh.
assumed. And the team, the Chicago Bears.
Ah, man.
Yeah. Funnily enough, despite the fact that the Bears beat the Portsmouth Spartans, the honor of runner-up was awarded to the Green Bay Packers since that final game counted towards each team's overall record. But the NFL championship game...
That's how we do things in Green Bay, baby.
The NFL championship game was so popular, though, that it became an annual tradition, and the Chicago Bears followed up their victory in the first unofficial championship game by winning the first ever official championship game in the following year. While basketball
And
exploded...
the Bears never won a single thing ever again since.
While basketball exploded to popularity quicker than most expected, it took time for any league to survive more than a couple of years. The National Basketball League was the first professional league, but it wasn't until the Basketball Association of America, now known as the NBA, came around that the sport really found its footing. In the first ever finals, and to a crowd of 8,221 fans, the Philadelphia Warriors defeated the Chicago Stags 83-80 at home to become the association's first champion. What year did this finals take place? And for a bonus question, what was the series score after the game was over?
Oh, the series score.
So, the Nuggets won this year 4-1.
Yeah.
You go ahead and kick us off when you're ready, Evan.
All right. I'm going to say they won the series 4-1, and I'm going to say 1956.
I'm saying 3-1 in 1941.
Can you say the year again, Evan?
56.
Okay. Micah was closer on the year.
Finally.
It's 1947. And the score, I too, Micah, was thinking it would be a 5-game series. It was a 7-game series, even in the first finals. 4-1 was the score.
Come on. This is garbage.
Let's go.
This 6-team playoffs granted a bye week to the top team from both the Eastern and Western conferences, but it set those two teams to play each other in the semifinals rather than on opposite sides of the bracket. Only 3 teams from the inception of the BAA remained in 1951, and all 3 are still a part of the NBA today. That includes the Philadelphia Warriors, now the Golden State Warriors, the Boston Celtics, and the New York Knicks. Rival leagues have long been a part of the history of the NFL. Recent memory tells of the AAF and the XFL, currently in its second iteration, but most notable league to compete with the NFL has long been the AFL. After a decade of sustained success, the NFL and the AFL opted to merge into a single league as the two leagues became what are now the 2 conferences of our modern sport. What year did this merger take place? And for a bonus point, how many times did the AFL fold before this decade of success?
I'm gonna guess they merged in 1960, and it was 6 times that the AFL folded.
All right, Evan.
I'm going to say they folded 4 times, and I'm going 66.
Nobody gets the bonus point. They folded 3 times, making the final iteration their 4th iteration. And the merger occurred in 1970, a little later than I would have expected, actually. So Evan takes home the lone point that round. The AFL was first born in 1926, just 6 years into the life of the NFL. It was started by player agent C.C. Pyle and starred his top client, Red Grange, but the league folded after only 1 season. 10 years later, in 36, they tried again, and in their second season, which was their final season, they played host to the first professional team to win a league title with an undefeated record. Their third iteration, from 1940 to 1941, folded shortly after America entered World War II and pulled many of its players into military service. The evolution of coaching strategies is often a precursor to rules changes when teams... Start that over. The evolution of coaching strategies is often a precursor to rules changes. When teams discovered that a slight lead in the 4th quarter could be maintained by dribbling in the backcourt and evading the defense, the owner of the Syracuse Nationals came up with the idea for a shot clock. In what year was this idea conceived? And, for a bonus point, what team did the Syracuse Nationals become just 9 years later?
Is it me first?
I don't care.
All right. I'm going to guess 1955. Now the Philadelphia 76ers.
Evan?
I was also guessing the 76ers, and I'm going 54.
That's
I swear to God, if you
Evan.
$1 me.
It's 1954. And good job to both of you. It was the 76ers.
All right.
The Syracuse Nationals lost in the finals in 7 games to the Minneapolis Lakers just 10 days before this owner released his proposal to change the shot or introduce the shot clock. 24 seconds was chosen because he was a big nerd and said if each team averaged 60 shot attempts per game, then they would consume the full clock. This attempt actually worked a little bit, as attempted field goals per game went from 75.4 in the previous season to 86.4 in the following one. It's hard to discuss the history of these great leagues without discussing the most memorable teams that defined them. For the final 4 questions, I'm going to highlight a couple of the greatest teams in the history of each sport. Widely considered to be the best defensive team of all time, this Chicago Bears team went 15-1 in the regular season. Nicknamed the Monsters of the Midway, their impressive defense allowed only 12.4 points per game in the regular season and 10 points total in the postseason. Their defense actually outscored opponents in the postseason, adding 12 points of their own en route to a championship victory. In what year did they win the Super Bowl? And for a bonus point, what was the one team that beat them in the regular season?
I'm nothing if not a homer. I got to say the Green Bay Packers. Come on. And I'm going to say 1985.
I'm going to say the Steelers in 81.
Evan was closer on the year. They are known as the 85 Bears. The Super Bowl happened in the following year, obviously, in 1986. And the one team, you should have been a homer too.
God damn.
It's the Miami Dolphins. Their defensive line was anchored by rookie William the Refrigerator Perry. At 350 pounds, he was not only a problem for opposing offensive lines, but he also contributed 3 touchdowns that season on offense. No team has ever gone undefeated in the NBA postseason, but the Golden State Warriors suffered just 1 loss en route to a ring. After appearing in 2 straight championships, the Warriors had already, and their already potent offense, convinced Kevin Durant of the Oklahoma City Thunder to join their ranks, and together they annihilated every team they faced. In what year did the Warriors win this championship? And for a bonus point, what team handed the Warriors their only postseason loss? Mike is doing math in his head.
All right.
You go ahead and kick us off when you're ready, Micah.
I think it was 2016, and the loss was to the Cavs.
Okay, Evan?
2017 loss to the Cavs.
2017. And the loss was to the Cavs in the NBA Finals, no less. The Warriors nearly sent all 5 starters to the NBA All-Star Game this year, with over 1.5 million fan votes going to center Zaza Pachulia, but he did not garner enough media and player votes to attend the event.
God, what an era.
Right. Going undefeated in the NFL's regular season is a rare feat. Even rarer is maintaining that lossless record through the postseason, a feat only accomplished by the Miami Dolphins.
Damn it. I was hoping that was the question.
Though they only played in 14 regular season games, their defeat of the Baltimore Colts in the Super Bowl cemented their legacy for all time. In what year did this Super Bowl victory occur? And for a bonus point, who was the starting quarterback? Micah literally just said he can't name a player on this team. So I'm sorry, Micah, but I had already written the question.
That's fair.
I'm saying 1972, and I have absolutely no idea who the quarterback is, so I'm going to say Zaza Pachulia.
I'm saying 1955, and the quarterback was Fitzmagic.
You nailed it, Micah. The quarterback is Bob Greasy. The year 1973. Greasy wound up breaking his ankle in week 5 and remained out until halftime of the AFC Championship game when it was tied 7-7. Backup quarterback Earl Morrall actually played well enough during the season to earn the MVP award in his absence. While the Golden State Warriors hold the record for the most wins in a regular season with 73, they were unable to hold off LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals, ending a nearly perfect season on a rotten note. With just one fewer win in the regular season, the Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, and Jackson Bulls finished with a postseason record of 15-3 and a ring to boot. In what year did they win this NBA Finals? And for a bonus point, what team did they defeat?
So the question is, what year was the 82-10 Bulls?
What year was the finals for the 72-10 Bulls?
It was 72. Okay.
And who did they defeat in the finals?
Okay. I think it was 77 against the Pistons.
Evan?
96 against the Jazz.
96 against the Seattle Supersonics. I thought that was for you, Micah.
Yeah, no.
The 95-96 Bulls set NBA records for the most regular season wins with 72 and the most consecutive home games won with 44 and the fewest losses after 50 wins with 6. This team is widely regarded as the best in NBA history, and for good reason. And that was our final question. With the final score, my Evan 11 and Micah 4. Oof.
All right. I guess that's what I get for talking shit earlier.
Great game, Evan. You
Finally got my first dub.
yes, sir. So that means that Micah and Evan are now tied 1-1, partway through our first round of trivia. So we'll see what happens next week.
Love that. All right. Well, thanks for doing that, Jonathan. That was a lot of fun. On to Sportsbook Showdown, of course, our weekly betting segment, and we're going to kick it off with Jonathan's first bet of the week. Jonathan, what have you got for us?
Man, why'd you gotta choose that photo, Evan? This is a happy moment.
Because it's funny.
The Broncos are beating the Dolphins. I think that, yeah, it's a difficult bet to back because they've shown nothing but failure and the Dolphins have shown nothing but success. But this is their make it or break it game. And I think they'll come out with a vengeance, and I don't think that a narrow loss will be something that is going to plague their minds, especially after nearly completing the comeback next week. I think that hopefully some of these demons are past them, and really it's just a bet from the heart. 2 units on the Broncos.
Love that. All right, Micah, what's your first bet?
My first bet is all money line going Seahawks, Ravens, Dolphins, and Jaguars. These are all favored teams that I think should pull out the win. At plus 203 odds, I put 3 units on that.
Love that. All right. I'm also doing a parlay, except I'm only going Steelers and Rams. These teams are actually both underdogs going into this weekend, but I kind of like their situations. So we're taking plus odds on them at plus 324 combined, putting 2 units down on that.
Before we move on to the next round, we forgot to do the review of last week. Don't take our advice. We have a combined 9 bets placed last week, and so far 7 of them have lost, and 2 of them won't be resolved until the end of the season. So,
But those are going to hit.
those will definitely hit. Zay Flowers, Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Tua passing leader. Those are our best chance at not losing all of our units last week. Our only chance, because everything else was terrible.
So bad.
But on to my bet, my second bet of the week. I'm going with 2 teams that are also slightly favored. And is that correct? That can't be right, because they're combined into a parlay that gets plus 277. And that's the Saints and the Bengals, both against, in my mind, relatively weak opponents, and both also just more talented than they've been showing recently. So I think that this is a pretty good shot to hit decent plus odds, and I'm going 2 units down.
Whereas my first bet was all favored. These are all listed underdogs. So I'm pretty sure you were wrong on that one. I think the Saints had plus odds.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I have Steelers, Saints, and Jets all winning. And that is plus 865, and I put 1 unit on that.
I was
like
pretty
it.
tempted for that exact parlay, honestly, but
Yeah.
Like I alluded to earlier, I'm picking Chargers and Vikings to be the highest scoring game of the week. I feel pretty darn good about that at plus 380. Like I said, both teams' defenses are absolutely horrible while their offenses are explosive. So I can see this being just a huge game offensively for both teams. Putting 2 units down on that.
I like that bet.
yeah. So for my third and final bet this week, I was really close to just going for a super favored team and being the first person to get on the board. But I instead opted to go with a super favored team with an exact score. 24-point shutout, Eagles over Bucks. Plus 50,000. I wasn't really planning on taking any 10,001 bets this week, but I didn't like anything else, and I think that this has a better shot than 1 in 500. So maybe I'll just.
So what you're saying is that Baker's not going to bake?
Baker is done baking.
Oh,
Speaking of Baker baking, I've got Baker Mayfield winning the comeback player of the year at plus 2,500s. I put a unit on it.
Both can be true.
It's time to bake, baby.
He'll get shut out this week. He won't bake,
On it.
but then he'll come back and prove it even more.
honestly, after seeing him the first 2 weeks, this is really not a bad bet, honestly.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised it was that high of odds.
All right. Well, after seeing just 2 weeks of football, this is all I need to see to bet on my NFC division winners because, we've just seen exactly what every single team is like. I'm picking the 49ers, Lions, Saints, and Eagles to win their respective divisions. That's plus 1,194, putting a unit down on it.
Besides the Saints, that looks pretty good.
Including the Saints, that looks pretty good.
Let Baker bake. Also, can we just acknowledge how the NFC North has 3 teams that are 2-0?
Anyways, guys, I think that's all that we have time for this week. Thank you for tuning in. And Evan, why don't you go ahead and send us out?
The Arizona Cardinals are going 0-17.
Sad one. Good night, everybody.
Screw the Cardinals.